Welcome to another episode of Villa Gaia podcast. I'm here today with Rory Tews talking about collective intelligence. So let's begin. Rory, for the audience, would you like to introduce yourself, your experience, your background, and what led you to collective intelligence?
Oh, quite a winding, I guess, and somewhat eclectic path. Um, so I originally did like a business degree in university, all that kind of good stuff. Was on the kind of standard track for a while. Worked in corporate finance for a little bit. Then ended up discovering, okay, that's maybe not for me. Did quite a bit of traveling, discovering the planet myself, and everything in between. Um, and then, yeah, stumbled over the idea of social entrepreneurship originally. Spent some time in academia, doing sociological research into social entrepreneurship before engaging in a form of finance referred to as impact linked finance, where the outcomes of different investments actually influence the financing conditions of investment rounds, using those for individual instruments and then building out into fund structures from there. And one of the things that was really blocking the scaling of that work, and remains a problem to be honest, is the data needed for that work. That got me into the whole area of data, slipped into more and more tech stuff, and then eventually onto to AI. And once that really began to emerge over the past, I guess, 2 years, it became increasingly clear that the real potential from a, let's say, species perspective is really, to my mind, around collective intelligence. So that was really the path up to now. But yeah, more of a backdoor, I think, than your front on.
But thanks, and thanks for being here with us. It has been a fantastic week. We had great workshops, great discussions, lots of accomplishments as well. So we've been working on these protocols, one of which was the Prime Directive, which you brought into the picture, which was really, really a key point. Now, I don't want to digress on the conversation, so I will ask to the director, what is the next question in the room?
Big brother here, invisible, but the voice is there. The initial question is about the path that led to collective intelligence as like a key notion, a key to the new and the breakthroughs, the transition into a new paradigm, and how that led to the hive mind coming into existence. How are those two linked, and what's happening now around hive mind?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just finish out from my side. Obviously, not having been in the tech space for a long time, I kind of just landed in there. I think I've been taking more of a almost like weaving approach, seeing where this tech is within kind of a broader institutional context. And one of the people that has certainly been pushing the boundaries, to my mind, has been your good self, Giannandrea. So maybe you want to also just share with the audience a little bit in terms of how you reached this point, and then we'll jump into explaining exactly what Hive Mind is in and of itself.
And let's keep co-inspiring, and same for me. And I think also you're being very humble in sharing, about who you are, your background, all the work you did, also on the systemic investors side of
Sure,
it, the
we'll
guides.
okay.
Well,
We'll
we
circle
cover
back to
it.
that later.
We
Yeah.
cover it. Well, yeah, of course. Personally, since we shared a good part of a common experience and path with system change, philanthropies, investors, networks as well of founders, technologies, funds in impact, and then now in a way taking a new label, which is systems change. Um, I, I think one of the challenges that we've been talking about often is the challenge with collaboration and coordination, which are very, very complex challenges and are often underestimated. And because we are in this journey since many years, it's more than a decade, you start seeing what are the common pitfalls of new founders, new networks, and people say, yeah, let's create big boxes, big events, let's get all people together, and then they will sort it out on their own. And then nothing happened, because self-organization, unfortunately, leads to chaos when it's so unstructured as it is.
Well, first there is a big wave of energy, right, and enthusiasm, and then it just there's no structure for it to grip onto.
And actually, your background, I mean, you have been studying anthropology. Your PhD is in
Sociology.
Sociology. So, I mean, you have been looking at this from different lenses, multiple lenses as well, investing, sociology, and technology. And of course, and then we see one challenge with collaboration, which is, of course, as we know, and we have been discussing in other podcasts, and we will talk more about it, that what we are giving it a term, telodiversity, but basically this spectrum of different intentionalities, different psychology, different drivers, which is not in a way facilitating getting humans to collaborate in the long run for a common goal, especially when individualism kicks in, fear, ego, survivalism, and all the other things that we know come into the picture very, very quickly. But then, even if that part was cleared, you still have the challenges with coordination at scale, because we do have a limited cognitive capacity. We cannot process a million data
Speak for yourself.
Well, almost everyone aside Rory and a few elected others. But yeah, well, mostly have cognitive capacity, which of course will not allow easily to coordinate the work with thousands of people at the same time, thousands of projects. And although there are example of large organizations employing hundreds of thousands of people or millions of people, this is often happening in a structure of hierarchy. And in what we're doing, because we want to build resiliency into it, as well as rapid adaptation and fast evolution, we want to have more voices heard, more experts involved. This is not a one person at the top of the chain giving orders. We need to create a form of mycelium network where basically we scout the terrain, we see where are the needs, where are the most effective ways to deploy resources, and all of these needs kind of a polycentrism type of approach, or mycelium network. And then, of course, where the hive mind starts to kick in is
picking up on that. I mean, you used one term in the middle of all that, which I think was like rapid adaptation, and for me, that has been the primary driver for wanting to engage specifically around collective intelligence. It has to do with the fact that we are accelerating into a phase of absolute massive disruption for our species, and our capacity to navigate that will be utterly dependent on our ability to adapt very rapidly to shifting conditions. And if we remain in our fully individualized bubbles, and best if AI is actually driving ways to divide us further, then we're not going to have a pleasant time as a species over the next 20 years.
Yeah.
So the really massive motivation or need that I see is definitely to provide people with the capacity to optimize their subjective sense of agentic capacity.
Yeah.
I got this. I can manage this. Why can you manage this? Because we're all managing this.
Yeah.
Right? And it's about mutual support. It's about being able to provide each other, maybe not directly like me to you, but me to a hive mind, right? A collective intelligence body that is there to help me. And I know that other people are in the exact same place, right? Also, in states of flux and just trying to figure stuff out. And there's a system there to help us.
Yeah,
And
sharing resources, allocating
sharing, caring, just trying to make it work.
in the most effective way rather than just subjective or going on based on feelings of a few and say, yeah, because I feel this, let me drop some resource here, or let me dedicate 10 years of my life solving a problem that doesn't need all that much attention compared to other things.
Yeah, I mean that's at quite a high level, but just taking it down to the absolute everyday, right? We're going to be entering a phase where there's going to be people moving. There's going to be large volumes of people moving, relocating. There's going to be people moving into new into new regions geographically, right? There's going to be different climatic conditions in the places that other people stay in. And this process of adaptation isn't just about, this kind of broad, resource allocation or whatever. We're really talking about just day-to-day stuff. Like, how is it that I can grow my tomatoes here in this climate, and it's not the same as where I was growing them last year because I had to move, right? Because there was a flood, whatever, right?
And this complexity is not factored in so many ways. I mean, we are at the core of like what maybe 70 networks in the impact and system change. In theory, we are working with the people at the forefront of change and impact, and yet, at least personally, I don't see minimally this complexity being factored in.
I saw one slide deck today where there was a diagram on there showing that by 2035 we could be hitting 3 degrees of warming, right? And I think that's the first time that I've seen a diagram showing something that it's not definitely going to happen, but it's based on the way that it exactly it could potentially come. It is not an unreasonable thought to think that that could happen, and that's 10 years away, and that is massive scale disruption, and we need to be ready. That's the bottom line.
And I think one of the things that I appreciate about you, about your mind and your vision, is this sense of urgency, which is not a sense of fear, but a sense of saying, well, the situation is there. We need to act. We need to act now. And since we only have 24 hours anyway a day, and we only have limited resources anyway, we might as well being effective with it. Yeah. And it's not saying we need to do it harder, it's just doing it more effectively. And that's where, of course, this collective intelligence we see as a potential for navigating us into this complexity. Because, of course, another thing that we know is that it's not easy for someone starting now this journey to figure out the complexity that we're dealing with. There's so many moving pieces. There are so many industries, sectors that are affected and are going to be affected, and they're going to be playing a role in systems change, whether it's in the demise, the decline, or the thriving and the empowerment and the flourishing. There's so much that has to be factored in, and it's very challenging for one person alone to hold all of this. But I do have one question. I don't know if it's in the questions, which is for people that are hearing for the first time the hive mind or collective intelligence, what are we talking about? What is this secret thing?
I've just been having. I was trying to formulate a way to transition to exactly that point in my head, from where we were at. So, thanks for the absolutely explicit bridge. I love it. I mean, as I say, I was trying to capture that in my head, and I mean, for me, right, it doesn't necessarily exist yet. So how I envisage it myself is that it's based on AI agent technology. So agents being highly specialized AI models, okay, that are experts in a given topic, okay. And the way that I envisage it playing out is that we all have expert models that are optimizing for our well-being. So they're basically models that track what it is that we're doing in our lives and are making suggestions for how we can optimize our well-being, right? Then lots of people having these, Okay. And as I figure something out in my life that has made my life easier, that has made my life better, that has made the life of my family better, the life of my community better, that knowledge is made available to the others across the hive mind. And the hive mind itself is essentially an infrastructure for the sharing and accumulation of collective intelligence. Okay, and I just want to I'll finish and then I'd love to hear your perspective on this. But I always use collective intelligence as a term because I love it, and it has this duality. On the one side, there is, this kind of collective processing power, right? This collective capacity to think things forward, etc. But I also think of collective intelligence in the sense of knowledgeable, actionable knowledge, right? The intelligence in the sense of actionable knowledge. And that's where I was talking earlier about just bringing it back down to the everyday, bringing it back down to the concrete. We are going to need to survive in order to thrive. And if we want to thrive, thriving together is always going to be more fun.
Yes, indeed. And although people might, when we talk about the urgency, some people might say that we're actually pessimistic in our approaches. But actually, in person, I find myself both optimistic and saying, well, if we can avoid harm, let's avoid it. If we can, we can in a way play a role in making potentially millions of people survive. What's going to happen? Well, I think it's worth putting every.
I prefer to be an alarmist that got it wrong.
Yeah.
Than somebody completely unprepared,
Which we see in abundance. So, yeah. So to add on top of what you were saying, I would say, of course, the role of having a tool that allows us to map all the failures of everyone, capturing the pitfalls, because in a way we are venturing and we are pioneering something that is partially unknown. We don't know exactly what will be the things that will topple system change in the positive and in the negative. And as we were talking about rapid adaptation, this can only happen if information is flowing quickly across the ecosystem in a trustworthy manner. Because
trustworthy and targeted. So this is kind of where the AI agent component comes in, that it is able to weight the suggestions that are coming in, right, for your context, for you as a person, in order to optimize for your well-being. You need to feel good and right and healthy in the world,
and harmonizing this with the well-being of the collective, which of course a human being alone cannot process this complexity
too much.
Absolutely. And then, of course, there is the other component which a number of people have been talking about, which is the challenge with governance. So how can you create governance systems where basically every voice is heard, every voice is included? And again, you cannot do this without technologies today, because democracy, we are seeing that doesn't really work. It doesn't work at scale. It's too fragile. And then you have propaganda and demagogy, and it's very easy to swing thousands or millions of people.
But I think it's a pretty bold statement to say that democracy doesn't work. I mean,
so far
it has
practice.
not worked in it has not worked in the socio-technical context in which it has been practiced up to now. But that's not to say that democracy doesn't work. It means that we haven't been able to make it work. Right? Because as soon as you move away from democratic principles, you're into something that's not democratic principles. And I'm yet to come across anything that I prefer to live in more than democratic principles. So for me, it's more about ensuring that we can operationalize them in a way that actually functions, right? As opposed to saying, man, it doesn't work. Because whatever isn't democratic is somehow, in some variant authoritarian, or, something
you still have holacracy, you still have other models of governance where everyone is included and is not delegated or participatory. So in a way, why do we need intermediaries, human intermediaries?
Maybe I'm getting stuck in the semantics. I was talking about the democratic principles, right? So in terms of,
I love you anyway, though.
Yeah.
especially when I'm sipping my coffee.
Yeah.
But for some people, it might look like red wine. I don't drink wine. It's pure coffee at 11 p.m. So then we were saying about the governance part, because
No,
that's
you were saying about
yeah,
the
I was saying
governance
about the
part.
governance
I
because
brought
that's
it
another
minefield.
yeah, and that's a challenging element and component for so many organizations, because from funding to capital deployment to decision making on cooperative single projects or a larger coordination endeavor, governance is always a pain point, at least at this moment.
No, governance in and of itself isn't a pain point. It's power is a pain point, right? If you don't have power dynamics, you generally don't have as many governance issues.
Yeah,
Right?
but humans are humans, and so we have them. So that's why I don't want to get stuck on semantic. Let's separate the theory from the practice. So when I talk practice. So back to the governance part. Of course, this is a key challenge that I want to address, because I've heard so many projects and so many funds in different networks and conversation, and coming to me and coming to us and say, yeah, but we want to figure out how to involve our stakeholders, our employees, our shareholders in decision making, and yet they don't find systems that are scalable. Especially because if you're talking about 20, 50 people is one thing, but if you're talking about 20,000 people and you need to take decisions and you need to take them fast and effectively and precise, you
Good
cannot
luck. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, you cannot run a referendum every 4 hours and say 20,000 people, hey, give us here the inputs. And neither you can do it only once a year, because we are in a moving ecosystem. There are lots of moving pieces. We need to adapt and react fast, and that's where algorithms and technologies allow us to bridge the right people at the right time when it comes to decisions, when it comes to knowledge, expertise, influence, as well as making sure that every single voice is heard. And that's where agentic or what we are also calling proxy AI is important. So everyone has his own AI that represents them in key moment of decisions, to guide with insights, with proposals, with hypotheses, ultimately, of course, leaving to humans the decision.
Yeah, but also representing those elements that are going to be most relevant for your well-being, right? And when that can then be, I'm going to use the term aggregated, okay? But when you need to take decisions at a community level, when communities of communities need to take decisions at a bioregional level, when bioregions need to take decisions at a global level, the complexity that we're talking about starts to go through the roof. And this is really something that I've been looking at in quite a bit of detail in the work I've been doing on systemic investing. So you mentioned earlier this investor's guide to systemic investing, and through the process of engaging in that, I had the absolute pleasure of coming into contact with some amazing organizations who are already trying to push forward with this work, right? In really plastic terms, in terms of trying to wrestle with these issues of resource allocation within kind of stakeholder models, how to identify those points in a system that are most relevant, those leverage points in a system where it makes most sense to invest resources. What resources? How do you want to invest them?
Poly capital.
Poly capital, yeah, my influence. How do I bring my whole self into the picture? How
my company, my assets,
the whole thing? And these are really massive questions, and our capacity both to figure out answers to those questions around how to allocate capital, right, in terms of process, is the one side. And then on the other side, there's the why, the where, the how, that also come into play. And that's where the broader community needs to be incorporated into these processes. And definitely the most, let's put it like this, the system that I see with the most potential for that working is collective intelligence and the hive mind architecture that we're working on.
Do we have some other question from the director?
Yes, for sure. We have a couple more minutes. I would love to know, and maybe people watching, listening too, what's already there? What's the hive? What's already evolving? What can the hive mind already help with, like in practice, in our projects, on our missions, in our lives? And what are some of the next blocks that are coming up the next months, year?
I mean, I can start in terms of just dialing it back a few months, in terms of the discussions that we were having, kind of mid to late last year, was definitely around, okay, how do we functionalize collective intelligence and get it to a point where it's really practical for people? And that was, going over this idea of circles, getting circles of people together, providing a collective intelligence environment, basically, where expert groups can come together, and share knowledge, and that can get captured, and then having basically networks of these kind of expert groups, where the knowledge, the distillate coming out of each circle is made available to the others, in order to inform a kind of an iterative process. That was kind of the background thinking in terms of how to move forward. And I mean, you've been working far more concretely on it, if you can say that about code, but whatever. So I'd love to ask you to just fill in a little bit more there.
On the interface, on the
Yeah.
tech side. Well, definitely with the platforms that we've started working on now 5 years ago. It takes time between the architecture, the design, the iteration, figuring out why humans can't collaborate that easily, and even worse with coordination. Yeah, with the platform with that currently the name is Symbiosis for people that are gonna perhaps look it up online. Then we will share, of course, links. And I say at the moment this name because also this part is moving to basically align with the branding, with the name of something bigger, because we can't keep in the membranes of these organizations. We can't get stuck in names, in egos. This is bigger than any of us. And to me, if things had no name, I would be even happier. We just call it the things. And then on the interface side, of course, we have been testing it, working on it with a few hundred experts until now. But on the Hive Mind, particularly the features that we are testing here at Villa Gaia, also with the Gaianet network as well, and a number of networks, are the feature of the Hive Mind Vox. At the moment is a temporary name, which is basically the capacity to listen to every meeting, chat, conversation, Zoom call, Google Meet call within the ecosystem, and then pooling all of this information into one vector database that then it's possible to use multiple agents to passively store the knowledge and then acquire the knowledge, or proactively having these agents and say, hey, expert Y, there is this other expert on the other side of the world that is working on the exact thing that you're working on. You should get together. Or investor and investees, or employer and employees. So we're talking again about hundreds of thousands of people and potentially millions of conversations per week that are happening across our ecosystem, and nobody has the capacity to do sense making alone. So that part is already working in alpha. We're testing it here in the villa. And then the other part that is working is the agent component. So each of us creating our own proxy agent in a way that then utilizes this data in the vector database to both make sense for what's happening at the systems level, but also making sense for us, so that it can come to us and say, okay, these are the things that happened this week, these are the projects that you should get involved, these are the things you should follow up to, etc., etc. So these are in alpha ready. By I hope within the next 2-3 weeks. Actually, let me show these. So today is 15th March, 2025. 2-3 weeks going with the alpha version of the interface to allow people from our own inner circle, of course.
Exactly. I mean, just picking up on that. So I'm working with one organization, and we will be implementing the Hive Mind with a view to act as a strategic client, basically a development client. So there's a spec sheet that
And
we've
they're
worked
coming
out.
here in 1 week, isn't it?
Exactly. So
Villa
that
Gaia
comes together nicely, But just to really get it very concrete and to provide basically a product, right?
Yeah.
That in different variants, but like an enterprise version where a company or an NGO, some kind of organization can take that in, provide their employees or their members with an agent, and the system then is able to incorporate all of the perspectives that are coming in. And I mean, ultimately, you touched on this very much earlier, so I have been looking for a nice spot to circle this back in. And I think it's very important here is the prime directive. So that, the prime directive says that the system must optimize for the well-being of each and every human. And I'm well aware of the whole subjectivity of well-being. That's the reason why I think it can actually function. And this means that at one organization, if it has 50 people, there's 50 agents, right? For these 50 people, there's maybe team agents, and then there's the organizational agent. And across the whole system, the objective is to optimize for the well-being of each of the individual people within the organization and the well-being of the organization as a whole. Okay, so there's always this interplay, this like dialectic, and the possibility to scale such processes and such structures is very high when you're dealing with a technology like collective intelligence. So starting relatively small with one organization, the plan is then to build out to a mini ecosystem pilot over the next few months, which will also have a stronger finance and investment logic underpinning it. And maybe having 4 or 5 pilot areas where each of the stakeholder groups are incorporating this technology to see how collaboration goes then when it's scaled from one organization to a small cluster. And then we can see, okay, how does the coordination between the clusters start to work, right? And from there, trying to build up to structures that have the potential to really make a difference.
I'm with you, and I'm gonna be so looking forward to have this conversation again in 1 quarter.
Yeah.
Talking with the instead of future past, and say, okay, this is what we tested. The fund that we know is coming up. The fund we have been testing it in this way, and these are the results.
Maybe I'll just be talking with my avatar.
Yeah, yeah. So I know we are running out of time, so I would love to, of course.
Are you speaking metaphorically or for
No,
species?
no.
Or, sorry.
Both. But for tonight specifically.
Oh, okay.
So to close, I would actually ask maybe just one more, not necessarily a question, but more call to action. So for the people that are listening, what support do we need? How would you invite them or engage them and say, okay, let's be part of this collectively?
I mean, the hive mind is in and of itself collective. Okay, so whatever you can bring is going to add to the collective. So there's obviously space for anybody to join the party. I guess on a technical level, people with kind of deep AI knowledge, productization, be awesome. People that can bring maybe development capacity, resources in that direction. People who'd like to be clients, right?
Testing it out with their own organization.
Testing it out with your own organization, and be willing to help figure out the pricing mechanisms around that. How much should we charge people, in order to make sure that the tech gets maintained and further developed.
Which, as we know, is all non-for-profit. So anything charged actually goes for the community, for
exactly.
the
I mean,
infrastructure.
it will stay evergreen.
Important
It is important to note. Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's not that we are pocketing anything. We are being steward.
Exactly.
And even the corporate structure and so on. That's something that, of course, we are discussing. So first of all, everything is open source. Everything we've been working on is open source. So everyone can go and take it and say, okay, I'm gonna create my own instance of the Hive Mind. But of course, to run it and scale it, servers cost resources, infrastructure cost resources. So, and because they are at the service of the community and the greater good, of course, is only fair that the community supports it. It can't move without.
Exactly. I mean, that's kind of the point. I mean, there are a lot of entities out there that are doing amazing work and continue to do amazing work. And I think, the final point that I would bring then in terms of a call to action, if we crack collective intelligence, it accelerates everything.
Without if. I personally have no doubt. I mean, because we are working so intensively on the technologies, I'm seeing that. So I have no doubt.
Okay, let me rephrase.
Once
we crack collective intelligence.
Yes.
Sorry. It will accelerate everything. So I think that's
so looking forward to it.
Yep.
Finally, effectiveness. Great. So amazing session. Thanks, Alex, for being on the directorship of this session.
Great
Rory.
Job, great job.
Everyone, see you in the next episode.
Thank you all.
That's it from Villa Gaia for tonight.